Hey, welcome once again to this edition of the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule is found in the Bible, and it was spoken by Jesus, where he said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so the way this program works is you, the listeners, are the others, and we are the do-unto-ers. And we're hoping to do unto you something that will help you in your spiritual walk, your spiritual life, your faith level, whatever it might be. And each week we have a different guest on here who has some background stories of their lives that they would like to share that they feel would be helpful to you. And today I have with me Kathy Oehler. Kathy, blessings. It's good to have you here on the program. Kathy's got a lot to share, and there won't be enough time in the program to share it all, but we're going to give it our best shot. And so I just want to introduce her by saying this, that she was born and raised in the U.S., but she then ended up spending some time in Japan. How long?
20 years.
20 years in Japan she lived, and she found out, among other things, that there's some radical cultural differences between being an American and being a Japanese person. And she had to learn a brand new culture, and it doesn't come easy. And as she was sharing that thought, it occurred to me that the same thing happens when a person leaves this country, the kingdom of darkness, and goes into the God's kingdom, the kingdom of light. You got to learn a whole nother set of rules because it's a totally different ball game. So anyway, I've asked Kathy to come and just share whatever's on her heart concerning her life, her background, her experiences. And so with that, I'll just say, go ahead, Kathy, take it away.
When I was really little, I'd go to summer camp. I don't know, maybe not really little, but at least the end of grade school and into junior high. And a lot of times at the campfire, they would say something like, what do you plan to do for God? What do you plan to do for Christ? And I thought, well, I could be a missionary, I could be a pastor's wife, I could do all these things. I wanted to do something for Christ. So when I got just a little bit older, I started backyard Bible schools in Seattle with friends, and we'd have, like in the clubhouse, we'd have these glow-in-the-dark crosses and little prizes and Bible, little Bibles to hand out, all these kinds of things. And then as I got a little bit older, I majored in college in teaching, English and music, and I thought, well, my first thought was to go to someplace like Nome, Alaska, where I'd teach with the Eskimos or something. And then I got married, and we thought, hey, I would apply to Japan, you know, who knows? Somebody had come from there and said, you should try this, so why not? I'm sort of a free spirit. And I applied to every school I could find in Japan, handwritten letters saying I'd like a position. I'm a first-year teacher, 24 years old. And 2 places in the city of Kobe offered me contracts. So I ended up there, and my husband too at that time. And so then one more thing is that when I was in high school, I was thinking, well, what would I really want to ask God about? And I thought, I would like wisdom. Maybe that would help me to stay out of, trouble, and maybe I'd be some more help to other people if I had wisdom. And I didn't really care about a lot of other things. Didn't think of material things so much, just that. But little did I know, if he were to grant that to me, what that would take. And so that leads me to, when I did get to Japan, I started to notice a difference, a huge, huge difference in a way of being. There's doing and there's being. Americans, we tend to do things. We plan, we perform an action, it's precise and unspoken, we estimate, we schedule, we raise funds, we defend, we have a beginning and an end, and this kind of thing. It's all planned out. And in Japan, I quickly realized that the way of being is going to be hurry up and wait. And that led to a lot of ambiguity, and naturally with language too. I didn't know any Japanese to start with. And so I learned that you tolerate a lot of things, ambiguity. You look for context all the time. What is really going on, not what you hear so much, but what is really going on, what do you need to know, and a lot of patience. So I learned that I didn't need to know everything at once. I could just be and see what happened. And I got to thinking about the spiritual realm, that when I was asked, what do you want to do for Christ, I started to shift my thinking that doing is much easier, and it involves ego, and it's within, perhaps, possibly, we think, my control. But being, I had to let go of all control. And I had to let go of ego, because sometimes you get quite embarrassed if something doesn't turn out like the plan. So I started to think of this, and one of the things that comes to mind is how often I heard the explanation that something, didn't work out. Somebody would say, sugo ga kawarimashita. It changed. The circumstance changed, and that's that.
That's
and
it, huh?
yeah, you don't say why. you just say okay. And with God, I found it's much better to say okay, not hey, why, and why would it be our business if God changes something? We're better off just going with it. So then I started to think, like, in Japan, you'd think things would go really smoothly and all that, but they didn't. And they did some of the time. The teaching part, the career part was really smooth. Everything was fine. But my home was not. And it started to make me think of Jesus, and how do you be like Jesus? We tend to think, well, patience, kindness, goodness, all of that is true. But in my case, I started to have to think of other qualities. And one of those things some of those things that stand out to me, rejection. Jesus was hated by officials, hated by the church leaders. I wasn't hated by officials and church leaders, but I did have a lot of rejection within my own home. And usury, people wanted Jesus to be a political leader so that they could also have prestige hanging out with him. And being used is not a fun thing. And Jesus experienced that sort of the way people aren't really sincere in their desire to be friends with you. Jesus was misunderstood. Assumptions were made about Jesus without any consultation on his part. They just assume he's this or that or the other thing, and he had no say in the matter. He was humiliated. He was publicly embarrassed, questioned, criticized, trapped, abused, gaslit. All of those things happened. And he had a lot of loss. Even at the cross, he owned so little. But at the cross, even his clothes were divided. He didn't even have those. And when you're falsely accused, the gossips, the lies, the sarcasm, he was betrayed by one of what would you think were one of the best friends. Judas betrayed him and sold information on him, and also got money for this. And then the disappointment he felt when even Peter, someone he thought he could rely on or seemed to be reliable, even denied him 3 times. So I experienced these things. It's a very long story I won't get into. It's the past, but I lost everything this world could have offered me. Houses, cars, furniture, clothing, antiques, anything. Everything was gone. I got to the States. I was a shell of myself. But in all of this, I learned a couple of things. One, don't complain. It doesn't do any good. Just don't. And I try to apply that to myself.
That's huge.
I try to be thankful for every tiny thing. I look for the tiny things. A friend of mine who is no longer with us, he used to say he would walk along the road and look for nature treats. A bird would fly, a squirrel would run across, maybe a deer would be standing, and he used to try to find one a day. That got me on this path of looking for good things, and they do show up. Lots of them show up every day, in people too. And I learned that I don't need what I thought I needed. I just don't need it. And I'm much happier. These days I'm actually very happy. And I started to make goals where I would, I put my feet on the floor pretty much every morning. I do this, and I say, this is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And sometimes I'm kind of wavering, standing there, but I proceed, and it tends to make for a little bit better day. I try to make every person I encounter have some sort of blessing, whether it's even a smile, if that's the most I can do. Sometimes I can make some kind of humorous thing, give them something to laugh. We all need to laugh. And so to summarize, I'm going to say that I'm rich. Now I'm rich. I thought I lost everything. And I'm not just saying that. I mean it. I'm thankful. And I have a little thing here with me. I have an oil lamp that was excavated in Israel.
Really?
Yeah. And I keep this right in a prominent place. It's very small, but I look at it and say, God has filled my lamp with oil. I have a lot of oil. It comes from hard experiences. The wisdom that you sometimes ask God for, it doesn't just get put on you. Sometimes you have to wade through the really deep water and come out the other side, and then you have the wisdom. So God has given me so much, and in these times we live in where so much is changing, and we have loss. A lot of people are having loss, earthquakes, these kinds of things. We need to fix our eyes on the eternal things. The oil is what really matters. It's not what's around us. That can go.
You said two things that are very important. I want to reiterate them. Don't complain.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any good.
No.
And God doesn't like it.
It frames the day in a negative way.
It frames the day in a negative way. And the other thing you said was be thankful. And we can always find something to be thankful for or thankful about. I like what you said about looking for something in nature. I mean, it's so exciting. I live here at the lake, and I just look out the window, and I see the eagles, and I see the geese, and I see the birds, and the squirrels, and the chipmunks, and the trees. I mean, it's just amazing when you start to get a glimpse of the magnitude of God, the majesty of God in creation. Even a spider.
Yes.
You know?
Each leaf is different.
Each leaf is different.
One season I pressed leaves just because I wanted to see what they looked like later. I've got like several books of these, and it's amazing. They're not the same. None of them are the same.
I read one time there were 30,000 different types of beetle. Just the beetle bug is one of a gazillion bugs, and there are 30,000 different kinds of beetles. So God is creative beyond our ability to even...
Yes.
How does he do that? And for the people who believe in evolution, I feel sorry for them. I really do.
Yeah, they're so confined.
It takes more faith to believe in evolution than it does to believe in a creator God. Well, Kathy, we are out of time. This went so fast. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing with us. And thank you, folks, for listening. You know, some of you may have been intentional about watching this program, because I know there are those who enjoy it to the extent that they want to make sure they don't miss one. And others come on accidentally, or they think it's accidentally, because in a hotel, a motel, hospitals, a lot of the public venues, when you turn the TV on, by default, it comes to Channel 3. And so perhaps you're one of those who didn't plan on watching this program, but you did, and there's a reason for it. God wanted to speak something to you, and I hope you listened carefully to hear what he had to say. Well, thanks again for tuning in, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, and we're going to do this again next week. Until then, God bless you.